So how would you define the current developments in Israel and the West Bank?
Well, right now there's an uneasy balance. We've had some attacks today as well. Israel is exercising extreme restraint and acting very prudently, I must say. It's a very delicate and potentially combustible situation where if a number of Palestinians or Israelis were killed, you could have far wider outbreak of violence throughout the Galilee, the Negev, the West Bank, even the possibility of another military exchange with Gaza. So the Israeli government is acting again, trying to use minimal force in order to have maximum amount of impact in terms of reducing and combating terror.
We saw that Hamas gave order for their supporters to commit suicide bombings. Could it actually be the beginning of another intifada, or you don't think it's that bad?
Well, the evidence so far suggests that not. In the summer of 2014, during the Protective Edge operation, Hamas tried repeatedly to ignite a third intifada in the West Bank, and it failed. It's failing again so far. The reason is very simple. The Palestinian population of the West Bank sees what's happening in Syria, sees what's happening in Iraq, does not want to have that happen in their own backyards. Palestinians, the economy is good. Palestinian civilians there have an awful lot to lose. They don't want to lose it on what will again surely be another futile attempt to destroy the state of Israel. It's not going to work. So what we've seen is sporadic outbreaks, mostly lone wolf operations, similar to those that took lives at Fort Hood, Texas, if you remember. And they're very difficult to combat. Hamas, though, should attacks emanate from Hamas cells, and Hamas has, of course, cells in the West Bank and probably has sleeper cells in this country as well, then Hamas will have to accept the responsibility for that, and Israel will take action to defend itself and to exact a very high price from Hamas, should it try once again to murder innocent Israelis.
But this time, series of attacks, several attacks were committed by Palestinians who are legal residents or citizens of Israel, including, by the way, Sunday's attack in Beersheba. So is there a solution to this threat from within?
Well, the solution is one that we have to safeguard our borders more closely and to monitor much more effectively who comes in and who comes out of the West Bank into Israel. You know, we try to create a situation. I can speak personally. I've been involved in efforts to try to increase the number of Palestinian workers who come into Israel every day because it's a shared interest. We have an interest in Palestinians who have a good life, who have what to lose, and don't want to sacrifice it, again, on some futile effort to try to destroy us in a third intifada. But while we're trying to increase the number of workers who come in every day to Israel, here are these individuals who take out knives or take out guns and start killing Israelis, and that makes my job much more difficult. At the end of the day, I think that Israelis and Palestinians together have an interest in stability. We have been one of the few quiet corners of this entire region. We have an interest in getting back to the negotiating table. We have an interest in reaching a stable and permanent solution to the Israeli-Palestinian struggle. I speak for my party. We support the two-state solution. But to get there, you got to negotiate with us. Right now, President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, is not negotiating with us.
Secretary of State John Kerry said in Madrid yesterday that Israel has the right to protect its citizens from random acts of violence. He also calls for clarifying the status of the Temple Mount. So is there a feeling the U.S. administration this time is a bit out of sync with Israel's position because they seem to condemn basically both sides for violence?
Well, it has been very disturbing to hear these types of remarks, and it has had a negative impact among Israeli public opinion. When people say blame Israel's settlement policy or claim that there's massive building in the settlements, which, trust me, I'm sitting in the Knesset with people who represent the settlement movement. They're not happy about the pace of building in the settlements. There really isn't much settlement building. But blame the attacks when the attackers themselves say why they were attacking. It has nothing to do with the settlements. It has to do with a lie that was spread by Palestinian leaders, including Mahmoud Abbas, that Israel's trying to take over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is patently untrue. And any remarks emanating from the United States that would tend to support that lie and is basically assuming a terrible responsibility, because people are liable to die as a consequence, innocent people. So I think that in more recent days, the remarks coming out of official Washington have been much more restrained and much more reflective of the reality on the ground. And the reality is that of Palestinian leaders who have, through incitement, spread the rumors that Israel's trying to take over a holy site in Islam. It is just absolutely untrue. And saying that Israel has used an excess of force, just the opposite is true. The extreme opposite is true. Israel's used minimal force, and that the status quo in the Temple Mount has to somehow be monitored. Israel has done just an outstanding job in monitoring it in the face of repeated Palestinian attempts and documented Palestinian attempts to change the statuses. The Palestinians who today won't let non-Muslims into the mosque. When I was a younger man, I used to visit those mosques all the time. As a matter of fact, those mosques on the Temple Mount are the only holy sites in Jerusalem to which the members of only one faith can go. Anybody can go up to the Western Wall. You can be a Muslim, you can be a Christian, you can be a Buddhist, you can go to the Western Wall. You can go to this Church of the Holy Sepulchre and be a Muslim or a Jew. I've been there many, many times, but you can't go into the mosque. And the Muslims have often undertaken illegal archaeological digs. The largest underground mosque in the world is beneath that big mosque. The whole mosque is liable to collapse because of it, and in the process destroyed thousands of years of evidence of Jewish inhabitants on that Temple Mount.
I wanted to ask you one more question about the American involvement. By the end of the week, Secretary of State will meet both with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and with the head of the Palestinian Authority, with the Mahmoud Abbas. So is his engagement welcome this time? I mean, do you believe that another round of peace talks is possible in the near future?
I think that the Prime Minister, and I want to make it very clear, Natasha, I'm not his ambassador anymore. I'm not even in his party, though my party is in the government coalition here. But I think he's really gone out on a limb in saying that he is still willing to meet with Mahmoud Abbas and still willing to sit and talk with him about all the outstanding issues on the peace process, including border security, recognition, all of those issues, irrespective of the fact that Mahmoud Abbas has been complicit in setting off this round of fighting and in the round of terror. And Mahmoud Abbas actually came on television the other night and just said it just a flat out lie. Said that Israel had executed a 13-year-old boy who was innocent. The boy was quite alive, and he was far from innocent. He had stabbed some Israelis. So it was a double lie. Even in the face of all that incitement, all of that lies, the Prime Minister, I think, deserves credit for saying he's still willing to sit with Mahmoud Abbas. And believe me, he gets criticized for it here. But myself, my party, we're going to support him.
But should the U.S. be involved in these talks this time if it were to happen?
The United States involvement is always welcome. America is our ally. And even though we have disagreements and sometimes we can get, rather peeved about some of the things that come of the statements that come out of the State Department, that will not change that reality. And if the United States feels that it can help materially bring Israelis and Palestinians to a conclusion, if it can help bring Mahmoud Abbas to the negotiating table first and foremost, then the State of Israel will welcome American involvement always.
Michael, during the first democratic debates, Israel wasn't even mentioned, basically. Do you expect this topic, the topic of Israel, to kind of get the backseat because of Syria, because of Russia, because of a bigger mess in the Middle East now?
I think that Israel's part of that equation. It's very difficult to talk about what's happening in Syria, what's happening with Iran and with Russian involvement and Iranian involvement in Syria without talking about us. We now have a common military front with Iran. We didn't have a militarized border. Now we have 3,000 Iranian soldiers in Syria, not far from the Golan Heights, in some cases just across the border from Israel. That's got to be a major issue for the United States, not just for Israel. We have the Russian army operating in Syria. They have anti-aircraft weapons. As far as I know, Natasha, ISIS has no airplanes. We are the people who have an air force, and we need to be able to operate to prevent, from the air, to prevent Iran from supplying Hezbollah with precision-guided missiles that could hit this building. I'm in the Prime Minister's office here. It could easily, someone with a joystick in Beirut could guide a missile, and we're going to have a hard time interdicting that. So you can't really talk about what's happening in the Middle East without figuring in Israel's interest, and the U.S.-Israel alliance.